Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. Today, we have an amazing guest. We have Andrew Campbell joining us, and we're going to be talking about the Pioneer Made to Grow podcast. Welcome, Andrew. How are you?
I am doing great, Tracy. How are you?
Good. We're just chatting about weather and too much rain and not enough rain, and hopefully harvest ends well for everybody. Today, I am excited to talk to you, as I mentioned, about the Pioneer Made to Grow podcast. Before we dive in, do you want to tell our audience a little bit more about you, what you do, and your role with the show?
Sure. So myself, I'm actually a farmer first, is what we do. We farm in southwestern Ontario, west of the city of London. We milk cows, we grow corn, soybeans, wheat, and hay, kind of in Middlesex and Lambton counties. And so that really is kind of job number one for us. But one of the things that I've done for quite some time and really love to do is just help companies with some of their efforts to reach their audiences. And for the last 3 years, that's included Pioneer, since we started the Pioneer Made to Grow podcast. And so hosting that show and speaking with people from across really North America as part of Corteva and Pioneer's teams has really been exciting for me, not just as one that loves to share stories with people across Canada, but also because as a farmer, I'm learning so much about, how to improve even my own operation.
Excellent. And I've known you for quite some time. I'm excited to have you on the show. And I'm really excited to talk a little bit more about the podcast. So, why don't we start with who the target audience is and why the show was created, what the goal was?
Sure. So the audience really is, primarily farmers, all across the country now. So when we started this, we've been doing this. We're entering year number 3, which is really exciting for us. What it did is it started for us as an Ontario-focused podcast. Let's talk about how can we improve growing corn, soybeans, and wheat in Ontario. And we shared a lot of those stories. But one of the things that we found that we could do as we grew that audience was, well, why can't we share stories from Western Canada as well about growing, whether it be canola, whether it be wheat, whether it be lentils, all of those types of things, was one of those things that I think is really exciting for us to be able to expand that audience. And it's one of those that I think fits really well with, Pioneer itself, because, for me, as a farmer, I've always known that the Pioneer team was a really great network of resources, whether that be the sales reps, whether that be the agronomy team, whether that be research, like whatever brand you were growing, you could always count on the Pioneer team to really be up to date on all the latest information. So now to be able to kind of try our best to bottle some of that up, and some of that experience, and then share it with a national audience it has been a lot of fun over the last few years.
I love it. And that's why I wanted to have you guys on the show. Our goal is to feature people and ideas and resources that impact Canadian farmers. And of course, as we all know, farmers from across North America. So I'm excited to have the show on because a lot of our listeners will also be listeners for this podcast. So why don't we go a little bit deeper? You mentioned a little bit about the content. What kind of conversations can farmers expect when they tune into the podcast?
Well, it's one of those that I think, one of the things that I believe, and one of the things that the whole team behind the podcast believes is, there's so many areas of a farm business that why don't we just try to get snippets of that, and how can we help improve that farm business in a lot of different ways. Being the Pioneer podcast, obviously one of the ones that stand out the most is on the agronomy side. How can we talk about everything from, I still vividly remember the very first episode we did, coming up to 3 years ago, and that really was how can we do a better job right at planting time. What are those key components that we need to keep in mind to make sure when we put seed in the ground, that it is going to perform the way we want. And then that expands to, the best way to manage herbicide resistant weeds, the best way to pick varieties, the best way to deal with, new diseases and diseases that continue to expand, whether that be, clubroot in canola, tar spot in corn, whatever it happens to be. So that's obviously a big fit. But then, that's not the only thing, that obviously makes a successful farm business. So to be able to also talk about, one of the episodes coming up this year is on the grain marketing side. We've done episodes on, just business management tips from top producers, in the country. And then even there's other aspects that, we think are important too, when it comes to things like mental health in agriculture. Where do you go to get resources when you need them? Or agriculture policy, when we talk to people like, Ontario's Minister of Agriculture, or we've had, the former head of Corteva in Canada, Bryce Eager. We're going to have Jeremy, who's the new head in Canada, this year coming up in the new season. So it really is a big, broad spectrum of topics that we're trying to cover with one main goal, and that is how can we help you improve your operation?
Okay, lovely. So you have touched on my next two places I want to go. So some past episodes, highlights, if you want to expand on that, if you have anything to add there. And then from there, I know you touched a little bit what's coming up if you want to go there. So do you have any past season highlights that you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, you know what? There are actually a lot of them for me. I think one of the ones is, Megs Reynolds. She, heads the Do More Ag Foundation. That was a really exciting episode, just to be able to, kind of get a sneak peek at what they're doing and some of their goals and what they're trying to do, and connect it into, we had Bryce Eager, on that episode as well, to kind of connect into why does a company like Corteva believe so much in supporting that. So it was definitely one. I always love the episodes. We had one, tar spot, in corn, in this part of the country is one of those new diseases that everybody is worried about, not sure how to handle. What do we do? It's such a new topic still, that to be able to talk to, an agronomist like John Saliga here in Ontario was just a great episode, I thought, for not only sharing that information, but again, as a grower myself, to sit back and say, these are the questions I have as a grower. I think a lot of other growers have that question too. How can we, learn more together on a subject like that? And then when you talk about stuff that's coming up, this is our first real season. We've done a little bit, in Western Canada in our past season, but not nearly to the extent, that we're going to with this season, where it really is a key component for us in ensuring that stories, and issues and topics that are absolutely relevant to any Western Canadian grain grower, to be able to expand on that and have those same great, interviews that we've had in the past couple of seasons now focus on Western Canada. That's certainly one of the things I'm really looking forward to.
Excellent. That sounds like some great conversations. You mentioned Megs. We're going to be having her on the show too. And,
Great.
I think I just wanted to touch on something that you said, Andrew. You're a farmer. I'm a farmer. We live, eat, breathe farming. And the mental health too is important, and a wide variety, right? Because if the farmer is healthy and happy, it's a healthy, happy farm. So I agree.
Yeah,
It
well,
sounds like
and it is one of those things that I think, it still is such a new topic for us in agriculture, to be able to, to not only talk about it and say it's okay to have this, but like the resources just haven't been there in the past. So I think, a lot of farmers kind of sit back and say, oh, well, there's nothing relevant for me. To be able to talk like somebody to Mags or others in the industry to say, no, we're working on that, we're fixing that. I think it's exciting for the whole industry.
I agree. Okay, that sounds like some great episodes that you guys have done, some exciting episodes coming up. If listeners are tuning in and they want to subscribe, tune into past episodes, etc., where can they find out more information?
Well, certainly it's one of those things that, as they can find this podcast, it really is kind of wherever they get their podcasts. So it's Apple Podcasts if you're on an Apple device, Google Podcast, or Spotify if you're on others. Really wherever you do get the podcast is where you can get it. But it's also one where we're excited that if podcast apps aren't quite your thing, or you want to listen somewhere else, you can actually just go to the website. It's pioneer.com/made to grow. And one of the really exciting things for the new season is that we're going to be sharing all of them on YouTube now. So we're going to have that video component too. We've already got a couple that we're really excited to be launching, in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
And so to be able to kind of feature, the video component on YouTube as well for those that would rather watch a podcast, we're excited to be able to provide that for the next season.
Oh, that's fantastic. And YouTube's such a great big audience for agriculture too. I know it's great to have it podcasts when the farmers are in the tractor, but there's huge number of farmers that are tuning into YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you don't have anything else to add, what I'm going to do is add all these links for our listeners, the podcast, the show, the website, YouTube, so that when this airs, they can click, subscribe, and check out the great show. Andrew, it has been a blast interviewing you. I've known you for a long time, and I am so happy to have you on this show. So thank you for your time.
Oh, well, thank you, Tracy. It's been wonderful to chat and to be able to see you again.
Excellent. And you in the audience, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, like it, share it, get it out there, and most importantly, subscribe so that you can catch episodes in the future as well. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.